Welcome back to Dear Rochester, Retire Well. Here's your host, Dave Pulcini, CFP.
Leon.
The reason, folks, that I wanted to have Kyle on the podcast is because, well, we'll just say it like it is, Kyle. Kyle is going to be getting or has already received by the time this comes out, we'll call it a life-changing check for the work that he has done. And we want to inspire the listeners and tell folks what's possible, but also what has led Kyle to that. I want to show how Kyle did this. We'll walk through what he did and have him possibly give us some suggestions on how you might be able to make something like this happen for yourself. I would say Kyle's a normal guy, but he's actually not. He's really smart, extra good looking if you're watching the video, so that probably helps Kyle. But I met Kyle in Florida, and Kyle, you know this. We met in Florida. We hit it off talking entrepreneurship, family stuff, business, health, wealth, all that good stuff. So appreciate your time today. I know we're limited. You are crazy busy, as we're going to hear in the some questions I have for you. But thanks for doing this, man. Let's start with this. Tell us what your initial role was in the company, and I want to back all the way back to how you're getting a check, what happened, how you got into getting equity and all of that stuff. But let's start with initial role in the company, responsibilities when you were there, and when you first joined. How was that going, and what'd you do?
Yeah, absolutely, Rocky. Thank you for the generous and gracious opening. Rewind the tape about 4 years. So about 4 years ago, I was looking for a job, and it's a small world out there. I had some mentors who I was, still in conversation with from earlier in my career, who were connected to people at this company called Mott Corporation in Connecticut, which I had no idea about. Right? I said, like everyone else does, like the applesauce. So no, in this case, it's not the applesauce. It's porous metal filtration, which sounds really boring, but it's a product that goes into all of the most important technologies that we use as a society today. Things like, medical devices, semiconductors, clean energy, oil and gas. They're basically used all around the world in manufacturing. And so I got introduced to this company, and they were looking to start to build out their finance organization. A relatively small company. They had just implemented an ERP. They had an accounting function, which is typical. That's sort of how companies start. They have bookkeepers, they have accountants who keep and close the books, make sure everything is clean. They were looking to bring on a finance team to start to understand the business, to drive the business forward, KPIs, and help them grow. And so I was the first person essentially that they hired to do that type of work.
So, okay, first person, Mott Corporation, not the applesauce. You go in. Again, normal job, right? You find the job through some people that you used to know. How you join this firm and you're doing your day-to-day stuff. How do you ask them or approach a company about, hey guys, I want some ownership in this? Because most people aren't thinking that, right? You know that. So how do you make that happen?
Well, great question, right? And so this is where, part of this is being prepared, right? The part of this is getting yourself into the right situations. So Mott Corporation is an ESOP. It's an employee-owned company. So every employee in Mott has an ownership stake in the company. Okay, so that's one of the amazing things about this transaction is that everyone from the newest operator on the floor, to the most senior executive has a vested interest in the company. So something to consider looking up for the listeners is look at ESOP. That's the concept of the employee-owned company. There are, dozens, if not hundreds, in America and a few in other countries. But it's a really interesting concept where you can immediately get some ownership stake in a company that you join. So that's number one. And then, number two is I think most people are probably familiar with the concept of stock-based compensation, something that typically happens in large publicly traded companies, right? Where senior members of the team are awarded a stock option, right? Or some kind of incentive aligned to the company's share price, so that as the share price of the company increases, the value to the employee increases and the incentives are aligned. And so Mott also has an equity program that works for their management team, similar to a stock option.
So you're doing your normal job. It's an ESOP. You have some stock options. What were you actually doing every day? Because I know you were crazy busy. We talked a lot. You've got kids. You got other stuff going on. You got 2 puppies this weekend. Like, You're really busy. What's the day-to-day look like for someone in that spot?
Yeah, great question. So the easiest way to explain what I do for the company is making the budget, right? Everyone's familiar with the company having a budget. You have a sales plan, you have a plan for expenses, who you're going to hire, how much money you're going to make on things. So my job is typically to make the budget and then make sure we are on track to hitting it. And when things came up where we were maybe off track, things are going better than expected, maybe going worse than expected, then it was sort of my job to provide the data that explained, why this was happening or how it was happening, and what we might want to think about doing differently, right? Did we need to double down in a certain market? Did we need to get out of a market? Did we need to launch a new product? Did we need to do a cost savings reduction? Do we need to hire more people in a market? Did we need to slow down our hiring? Those are the kind of things that I would work on a day-to-day basis.
Hey, how did you learn how to do that?
Oh, man. Like anything, experience, time and practice, being around people who are already doing it. I started my career at Stanley Black & Decker, so a very large, multi-billion-dollar company. I was very fortunate to work for a lot of very smart, very hardworking, and people who were patient enough to deal with me early in my career and help me to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you have a great level of awareness. You see opportunities, obviously. You capitalize on it. You're hanging out with the right people, so that certainly helps too. And people that believe in you, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
So you guys, you've gone through all this stuff, normal job, doing the thing. When you have some money in an ESOP or you're part of an ownership team, you guys have gone through this at this point, an acquisition process. And most of our listeners are like, what the heck does that mean? I'm never going to experience that, which I want to get to in a minute. But you're going through an acquisition process. Like, how does that start? How involved are you? And I'll stop there because I could ask you 5 more questions that I'll probably ask in a minute.
Okay, yeah. So let's rewind for a second. Before we get to the point where we're starting to be looked at as an acquisition target, we actually bought 2 other companies. So one of the first projects I worked on when I came to Mott, aside from doing what I did in the business on a day-to-day, was we were in discussions to buy someone who at the time had been a longtime customer, a company called Asco Filtri out of Milan, Italy. So we had worked with them for a long time. They'd been a customer of ours. We had partnered together to do things for very large companies like Saudi Aramco, Chevron, very large oil and gas companies around the world. And so we worked with the Asco team. Their owner was getting to an age where he was ready to retire. He wanted to sell the business, and we were a natural fit. So we ended up moving forward with that, and we ultimately ended up buying Asco, right? They became part of the Mott family. Okay, so this was in 2022. And then in 2023, we got to know another company quite well, a company called Digestive Organics out of Michigan. We had both invested at kind of an angel investment in a small membrane filtration company. Okay, and so we got to know each other that way and said, hey, Digestive Organics would be a great fit as part of Mott also. So we went and bought Digestive Organics. So now we're growing tremendously, right? Our revenue has increased by 4x in a span of less than 4 years. We've grown around the globe. We've got a global presence in, out of Italy. And we start to get more and more inquiries about folks who want to buy us, right? So that's sort of how we get to the next kind of acquisition thing.
So you're doing all the budgeting for these acquisitions. You're the guy in charge, which is crazy coming from one of them, right? You're one of them. And yeah. Where does that money come from? You know what I mean? Companies don't typically sit on a bunch of cash. Like you guys, let's talk about your acquisition. Somebody's they've bought you. Where do they get that money from to pay you and then pay out all these folks in an ESOP plan?
Sure. So the company that is going to buy us is called IDEX. They're a publicly traded company. This is all publicly traded information. They've released this. And so the way that they'll pay for this is they do have some cash on hand, but then they'll also borrow from their credit facility, right? So the way that this typically works, and this is something that we've done, this is something what IDEX does. A general rule of thumb is that if you're a large corporation who has a recurring profit stream, let's say that you make $100 million per year. Most banks will be fairly happy to lend you $200 to $300 million, right? 2 to 3 times what you make per year. That's a level that you're going to be able to relatively comfortably pay back over time. So companies borrow this money, they pay it back, and then as they start to pay down that debt, when they find something else that they want to buy, they'll then borrow more money, buy the asset, and then pay the debt down.
So it's just amazing, man. Like 6 or 7 years ago, did you know anything about this stuff?
I did only because it was something that I had done in my work, earlier on at Stanley Black & Decker, right? So I had helped them to buy and sell businesses, in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia. So Stanley does a lot of this kind of thing. Actually, Stanley Black & Decker is now one company, but for years and for decades, Black & Decker was a company and Stanley was a company, and then they ended up ultimately merging, sometime around 2008.
Yeah, all right. So you find yourself in the middle of this. So listen, man, you've built the credibility with the audience. You talk the talk. You're doing the thing. How much? I want to ask you this question. I want to talk about some folks that consider themselves they'll never have this happen to them. But for you, how many hours a week were you working during all this stuff?
Over the last year, 70 to 80 probably, a lot of weeks. Yeah. In Payout, it was like every weekend, a lot of nights, early mornings, weekends, from the fourth quarter, probably starting in like October through July. It's been a long road.
And that's a true 70, 80 hours a week. And you are a guy, based on the position you're in, that, I mean, you're an Excel wizard, right? So you're in front of the computer doing the stuff, and you're on phone calls and meetings. Like when you say 70 to 80 hours, I get a lot of people that say they work a lot and they're busy. Like, I know for you, man, it's a true, I have no time. When someone says they're slammed, like, you are truly slammed. So you've put yourself through this, right? Okay, so let's back up. You got the credibility. You worked crazy hard. You got yourself in the right spot. You surrounded yourself with the right people. You've prepped yourself. I know you're a student of always self-improvement and becoming more aware and health and all of those things. So you've put yourself in the right spot to get a big check, right? Most people don't fathom this. And we both came from a background that's like, no one thinks this is going to happen. Like, that always happens for somebody else, right?
Ian.
So let me ask you this first. How does it feel? Like, you get that thing in the bank account. How does that feel? Most people, honestly, they'll never experience it. But people want to know, how does that feel to see that happen?
So it feels incredible. It's almost, it's one of those things where it's like when you book a vacation, but you're not going there and it doesn't feel real yet. There's a little bit of that type of feeling where that this is going to change things, but it may not quite feel real yet. So that's a little bit of the stage that I'm in my life. And we know that things are going to change. We know that, my role is going to change, the career is going to change, and things are going to change for us financially. But at the end of the day, the things that really matter the most aren't going to change, right? It's my relationship with her, my relationship with the kids, the community that we put ourselves in down here. The things that we do on a day-to-day basis aren't going to change. What this is going to do for us is, provide some more opportunities for the kids, allow us to go and do some fun things, provide a high level of security, financial security, for my wife, my kids, hopefully their kids if we play our cards right down the line. So it's a great feeling, but ultimately, you've got to be happy in the day to day, right? You've got to be happy with the things that you're doing on a normal basis, because money's not going to change those things, right? The things that are going to make you happy.
I feel like the company has trained you on that answer, Kyle, but I think it's right on.
The company, money will solve everything. Work harder and we'll pay you more money.
That's right. That's true, man. For the listeners, I work with a lot of folks that have had, we'll call it a sudden wealth event, right? It's some large number that you didn't expect to ever get. And it could be an inheritance. It could be literally winning the lotto. It could be selling a company. It's the people that get it, and Kyle's just one of them, and he now has experienced this. They seem, it's almost like it's annoying when you're on the other side of it, because it's like, yeah, dude, you're financially set for at least a really long time, unless you screw something up. You're a budgeting guy. You're not going to screw it up, and a financial person, right? So, but when you're on the other side of it, it's like, this person just got some life-changing check, and they're like, yeah, no big deal. I'm telling you, folks, every person that I know that got a life-changing check says the same thing. And Kyle was more articulate about it, but it doesn't change the day to day. If you're not happy, I'll tell you, if you're not happy now, you won't be happy then. We see it all the time. That's awesome. So Kyle, if I'm a listener, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor working really hard day to day. How these people, again, the listeners are thinking, I have no chance of ever having that happen. What would you suggest for them to have something like this happen? Or where can they start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that I would first think about that, if you're trying to think about how you can create this type of value for yourself, is the first thing you need to look at is what are big problems that need to be solved, right? So our CEO, Boris Levin, did a great job of this. He found this company that had this great technology. He did a good job of aligning it to markets that are strategically important for the country and are growing rapidly, right? So things like semiconductors, things like medical devices, things like clean energy, things like aerospace and defense, right? These are big problems that people are willing to spend significant amounts of money on to solve those problems, right? And then you need to find an organization or a team or some group of people that you can be a part of, and find someone who has a solution that's better than everything that it's going to be, right? And so that's really what Mott was a great blend. That was a great technology that was aligned to the right end markets that were growing fast. And so then the opportunities just continue to present themselves, right? The customers come because your product is better, it saves them money, it improves their reliability. And so you're able to grow very rapidly with the right sales organization, with the right capital structure, and with the right team in place.
So So for someone in a business, I've said this before, Kyle, if you find a way to add value to the business in a sales capacity, or somehow you're helping that business generate revenue, that's an easy one. Like, find the thing and help make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a teacher, I'll push you a little bit on this one. I'm a teacher. I work 8 to 3, man, and I've got kids at home, and I need to keep my steady job.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take that step?
Yeah, great question. So look, first you need to find somewhere where there is a problem to be solved, and then you need to go and find some kind of improved solution. And then you need to find two other things, right? One is how you can create value for that organization or for that team or for those customers. And you need to put yourself in a position where you can get paid for it, right? Because if you are, you brought up teachers, so let's bring up teachers, right? Teachers are not set up, if you are a great teacher and your kids have better outcomes than other teachers have, and you put your heart and soul into it, you're just not going to get paid anymore, right? The pay is very structured based on the amount of time that you've been there and the certifications and degrees that you have. So that is not an area where you're going to be financially rewarded. And it's a tragedy, really. It's really not a good thing. That could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
About how kids need to be educated and how teaching is a really important subject and how those teachers should be compensated. So I think that's a really tough area. But what I would look to are, what companies are in private spaces that are doing things to improve those outcomes, right? And are those things that you would pay for, right? So as a parent, I would pay for my child I pay for my child to get tutored, right? I pay for my child to go to camps. I pay for flashcards and toys and other devices and things that help my children learn. I pay for books for them, right? So find things that you would pay for and find a way to provide those services to people. And that may be, posting online, that may be, finding some type of product that you can sell, or it may be joining a larger organization and working in a selling function, or working in a service function, or doing something for that company. And I would say if you really want to find areas where those companies exist that are real, that are making an impact and looking to grow, the place to look would be, starting to look at what companies are being invested in by private money, right? So where is private equity investment going, and where is venture capital money going? Because if you see these companies that are getting invested in, there are a lot of the education space. You also brought up nurses and doctors. There are tons in the medical space, right? Companies that are rapidly growing and trying to do things different than the traditional medical system. and the value is being seen, and there's an enormous venture capital industry, and same thing in private equity that are backing these companies that are making a difference. And so those are companies that are going to be willing to pay for results and pay for the performance. And so if you can find a way to deliver for those organizations, they're going to be happy to compensate you so it can be a win-win.
Yeah, I always go to, if I'm a teacher, and I work with a lot of teachers, and I love them. What about, we could brainstorm ideas all day, but coaching other teachers on processes and systems and getting subscription models. It's so much easier now with social media and the way that you could make extra money doing that. And anyway, that's, hey, let me throw a curveball here.
Sure.
Just because you're obviously well educated on this stuff. What's missing in education right now for kids?
Well, all right. Let me give me a second here.
We can edit this out if it gets really bad, Kyle, but we probably won't because we don't do that.
So I'll share here, right? As we moved here. We moved here from Connecticut, right? Into Southwest Florida. One of the reasons we came specifically was for the school system. Although we've done that, we've now pulled our kids out of the public schools that we are specifically selecting this area for, and we've moved them to private school. Right? So part of the difference that we've noticed in the private school versus the public school is that our kids love and are enthusiastic about school. They are taught in a way where they enjoy the stories that they're reading. They enjoy the math and the science that they're doing. They're doing it more collaboratively and less, let's say, less formulaically, and they understand it and they're enjoying it. The other thing that I would say from a school perspective is that the public schools that we were in did not have a lot of, let's say, parental involvement, right? So I used to talk to you all the time, and you'd be sitting, waiting for an hour and a half in the car line to pick up the, right? At the school that we're at now, it's a different dynamic where they are more focused on building a community for the kids. So they don't wait in the car line for the kids to get sent out to the parents. There's plenty of parking for the parents. The parents come early. They can go in, they talk to the teachers. They have that face-to-face interaction at drop-off and pickup. And there is a playground outside. And so at drop-off and pickup, the kids tend to go and play on the playground and socialize with each other. It gives the parents a chance to socialize and get to know each other. And so I think that community building has been a real positive for us. So those are the things that I'd say: community building and, the love and the joy of learning, especially with young kids. My kids are still in elementary school. So, it's hard, we'll see, when they're probably not going to love school, but for right now they do. And that's been a positive change.
All right. As they grow, one more education question. They get into middle school and high school. You get to pick 2 subjects that they have to learn. What are they?
In school or outside of school?
In
school. Great question. I think, math is obviously key, right? So, strong understanding of strong understanding of 4-function math, algebra, and sort of how to think of the practical world numerically, I think is really important. It's a core part of what I do in my job, and I think it's a core part of life. If I had to pick a second one, I would pick school-wise, probably English, to focus on learning to write. I think learning to write is something that not a lot of people are very strong at. It teaches you to structure your thoughts and to communicate effectively. And so that's something that I learned, later in my career. That's something that I didn't appreciate, maybe being, early in my career or in college, is how important writing and communicating effectively would be. But when you progress during your career, it's something that all senior management and executives appreciate, and something who can clearly communicate and articulate their thoughts. But I think there are other things that people need to learn outside of school, right, that aren't coming from school. So should we do 2 there?
Well, so listen, my head was going toward, and I don't want to steal this from you.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, finance, nutrition.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing that in school? And maybe that's what you were thinking outside of school.
Yeah, exactly. So I think nutrition is super important, right? That's another thing that's getting that they talk about in our schools, like our business home, and they learn to talk about like what sugar does to your blood, sugar does to your brain, what sugar does to your gut, how to read that ingredients list, right? It's like my second, third grade daughter can look at the ingredients list. It's like, I don't know what this is. This probably isn't good for me. Versus this thing has any ingredients in it. I know what all of them are. This is probably pretty good for me. But nutrition is a huge one. I think personal finance and just understanding, how to do the math for their life is incredibly important. I know some schools have started to do it, and I think that's great, right? They're doing some projects around, hey, when you graduate, here's how much money you can make, here's how much you can own, here's how much a house costs in this area, what do you want your life to be like? Let's build you out a budget. I think that's a fantastic thing. I think some schools are doing it, some aren't. Certainly something that we'll do with our children. If our kids want to go to college, they will certainly be sitting down and laying out how much it's going to cost them and how they should think about that and what incremental earning power they'll have if they can go. So that's something that we think about all the time. And I think the other part is something around, I hate to use the word because it has such an probably the wrong connotation, but like philosophy, but more around like how to be happy. And what are the ways to think about the world? Like, what are the mental models that you should know and understand? And it's probably some combination of, traditional philosophy along with some basic understanding of different religions and just a general understanding of how to think about the world, how to be a positive person, how to positively influence other people, and how to be successful, within your life. Because if you're not intentional about that, then, the kids end up influenced by, their friends, the school, the TV, and they end up lost.
Man, wait, listen, we got like 3 minutes. I could ask you 50 more questions. I think this is a good one though.
Yeah.
Based on all of this stuff, and you and your wife have become financially successful, you're going to continue. I want to ask you what you're doing next, but we'll save that for a different episode. You're going to have more than enough going forward. Are you going to give your kids money? Are you going to pay for everything? And when do you cut them off?
No. We're certainly not going to give them everything. But this is something that honestly, my wife and I are still kind of in discussions about. We're not sure how it's going to work. And it depends a lot on what they're like and how they are growing up. I heard Jackie Chan has a great quote on this, and I can't articulate it perfectly, but maybe someone can pull it up for the show, if I can send it to you after. It's something to the effect that he's going to give his son something like, $1 million. And his point was, they're like, well, why wouldn't you give him more? And it's like, because it doesn't make any sense for me to give him more, because if he's worthy of more than it, then he won't need it. And if he's not worthy of it, then he'll waste it.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, how do you get your kids set up to do something where they can add value to the world and have the opportunities that you want them to have, like to be able to network and to get the education that they need. And we want them to be able to do something that adds value and not have to be only focused on money. But you also need them to have some adversity and, learn how to handle a challenge and have things not go their way and be able to work through problems. And that's something that, my wife and I work on that every day of the work. We certainly don't have all the answers.
You teach the kids to fail, right? So the quote, Kyle, is, if he is capable, he can make his own money. If he is not, then he will just be wasting my money.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I like Shaq's quote where he just says to his kids, I'm rich, you're not. I love it, man. Hey, Kyle, we're right at the time you got to get out of here. How can our listeners find you, follow you on anything? I know you're shutting things down for a little bit because you might have to after this. But where can we find you or ask any questions?
LinkedIn. I'm not really a social media guy, so I don't really do any other social media, but I do have a LinkedIn profile. Connect with me, send me a message, ask me a question. Happy to connect.
I got you. And for the listeners, reach out to me. I can connect you with Kyle if you need anything. Kyle, appreciate the time, man. Folks, make it a great day.
Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. Information here is provided, in part, by third-party sources. These sources are generally deemed to be reliable. However, neither 6 Point Financial Partners, Private Client Services, nor RFG Advisory guarantee the accuracy of third-party sources. The views expressed here are those of 6 Point Financial Partners. They do not necessarily represent those of Private Client Services, RFG Advisory, their employees, or their clients. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by 6 Point Financial Partners or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives through Private Client Services, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, LLC, RFG Advisory, or RFG, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services, 6 Point Financial Partners, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.